I'm going to talk a little bit today about one specific product that has been developed at dClimate that we are very excited to share with the community. We have not officially launched this yet, so this is a bit of a sneak peek, but very timely given all of the conversations surrounding dMRV and end-to-end digital data infrastructure for enabling carbon markets to scale in a way that is transparent and accountable. So in getting into the intro, just want to talk a little bit about dClimate, who we are and what we do if you're unfamiliar with us. So dClimate is a decentralized data network that accelerates the way that climate data and information about our planet is shared, stored, and monetized, and that creates modular data infrastructure for accelerating the development of key climate tech applications like dMRV. So this is a really natural step in our progression from the underlying infrastructure that we have created for making these types of applications possible to bring them into the real world and making them possible for real world stakeholders. Essentially, what we do in a nutshell is we take structured and unstructured data sets that are extraordinarily complicated and difficult to work with, and we make them actionable and easy to understand for communities, businesses, and governments that are impacted by climate risk and that need to understand their risk exposure and the underlying data in order to make informed decisions, ranging from how to invest in different climate finance initiatives to how to deploy disaster aid for different catastrophic events. So this is just one use case within the ecosystem that I want to talk about during this session. So don't want to get too deep into the problem since our time is limited today, but why do we need dMRV? So if we think about how MRV is done traditionally today, it involves a ton of manual methods where we are climbing trees and doing manual forest mapping in order to figure out the above ground biomass, the carbon stock, and other metrics that make up forestry health in order to create an initial baseline to start out a project and to submit a verification report. And this has a few glaring issues that hold back the voluntary carbon market from achieving the scale that it needs in order to be a tool for helping corporations meet their net 2030, 2040, and 2050 commitments, some of which are very ambitious. So the first major issue is that these systems are, in some cases, incredibly expensive, in some ways that are prohibitively expensive for some of these smaller carbon financing projects that are in this space. They can also take months to even, in some cases, years, depending on the scope of the project, in order to do initial baselining and verification, and then enable high-quality credits and projects to come to market. Then there is the issue with the ability to do ongoing monitoring so that we make sure that the underlying integrity of the ecological assets is sacrosanct, so that emissions reductions projects are actually contributing to real, verifiable, and additional emissions reductions, so that this is not only a market that is helping to move climate financing initiatives forward, but that is giving the key stakeholders who are looking to participate in these markets, like investors and large corporations with these net zero goals, confidence in carbon credit tools as a mechanism for offsetting scope 1 through 3 emissions. So what is the solution to this? It is digitizing this traditional process of doing MRV through mostly manual means and using a combination of remote sensing technologies, big data, which is taken from the underlying dClimate data infrastructure. So this is a combination of both public satellite data from the European Space Agency, so Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data, as well as some private and commercial satellite data so that we can get extremely granular with our data outputs and estimations, and then combined with technologies that all of us are familiar with today, like artificial intelligence. So CYCLOPS, in essence, is an open artificial intelligence application that models how a forest grows over time using mostly generative AI techniques. So this isn't simple data in, data out. This is taking a generative approach to AI where the system is learning over time how a forest grows, how an ecosystem changes over time so that it can detect abnormalities like a loss in biomass or changes in biomass, deforestation, loss in forest cover, or other abnormalities that would contribute to degradation of forestry health, so that it can create both long-term time series data sets for each of these locations, as well as predictive analytics to help a range of stakeholders from project developers to large corporations and investors understand in a very granular way the overall health of the forestry assets that they are looking to manage and monitor. So let me walk through a little bit about how this works and go into some detail there. So it's actually a very simple application to use. So right now, the team at dClimate is working on creating a global biomass model, as well as a similar models for carbon stock and underlying forestry health metrics. And the way that they're doing this is with the underlying data that I had mentioned before, so that we can populate data for different forestry regions around the world. So the way that it works is that if a new location is requested, at the moment, it would usually take a couple of weeks, depending on the location, or to populate, or in some cases, a couple of days. There are some locations with more cloud cover variation than others, where a different data set would be required in order to get the same output with the level of accuracy and granularity that we're accustomed to with some of our other locations. So the first step is that you select a tile. Then once you select that tile, you're able to visualize metrics for above ground biomass, carbon stock, and changes in biomass on a year-over-year and quarterly basis. And right now, the data is populated on a quarterly basis, but with future updates that are coming, you'll be able to visualize these every single month with some real-time data on different forest locations. Once you're able to save this to your account, you can sign up to receive custom alerts so that when changes in biomass are detected, that immediately goes to your email so that you get frequent monitoring reports on the status of a different location so that we have real-time data on the status of an ecosystem so that it's easy to track and to update vintages in real time. And then once you have that complete, the platform then takes the basic data and it auto-generates a full data report that can be used by a remote sensing and GIS team to construct a full baseline for each of these individual locations. And so this is taking the full underlying model and methodology for the CYCLOPS platform and then constructing both estimations and real-time data for each of these variables, including biomass, deforestation, and then other metrics for forestry health. Some of the work that's being done right now is to incorporate different ground data metrics so that we can have a much more granular and accurate depiction of forestry health in some of these locations. But the way that we think about CYCLOPS is that it is an MRV application for different carbon finance projects, but it does much more than that. It is really an end-to-end tool for carbon and forest management from a data perspective that can be used from the very beginning of the process so that project developers can actually do upfront due diligence on projects instead of spending tons of time and money doing initial diligence and sending teams on the ground to doing the actual verification, baselining, and ongoing monitoring to having a tool to do long-term risk management. The data that's populated by this platform can then be used to construct different risk management tools like insurance that will be needed in order to help these markets mature over time and to de-risk investment in future climate finance initiatives so that we have the ability to give both investors confidence in their underlying investment as well as project developers the tools that they need in order to move forward with bolder and larger initiatives and investments in keeping standing forest standing and other ARR initiatives. So I mentioned a lot of these platform features in my previous presentation, but basically we're really excited to launch this soon, and it's currently being used by a number of stakeholders across the carbon finance market structure, including project developers, marketplaces and exchange layers, as well as investors who are looking at these markets from a maturity standpoint. And the idea is that this is both an open tool that can be used by novice users who aren't professional data scientists in order to understand the underlying data from projects that they're monitoring, as well as something that can connect via API with all of the digital infrastructure that is needed in order to help these markets achieve maturity and scale. And so we look at this and a lot of the other solutions that you're going to hear from today as not nice to have tools, but essential tools for helping both the voluntary carbon market as well as other markets for natural assets achieve scale, transparency, accountability, and maturity over time. So I really appreciate your time today and for hearing this presentation. And please do reach out afterwards if you have any questions or if you'd like to see a full demo of the platform, which is currently live and in use today. Thank you so much.